¡Sale, ya está listo! ¡Partido vaquero!
This is the Danza de los Diablos, or the Dance of the Devils. It's performed on South Mexico's Pacific coast, the region with the country's largest concentration of Afro-Mexicans.
No es de la África la danza.
These dances don't come from Africa. They are Mexican, but these instruments are African and we make them ourselves. Now the black people have united with the local culture and mixed with the local people along this coast, and we multiplied, and there are now many black people here.
This country is home to more than 1 million Afro-Mexicans, yet these are marginalised and often forgotten communities. They represent around 1% of the national population. Mexico's 2020 census is the first ever to include Afro-Mexican as an ethnic category. Mexico's legacy of slavery began hundreds of years ago.
The slaves in Mexico were in the places where there was mining. This town was founded around the year 1800, most likely by fugitive slaves who escaped to the coastal regions where they could survive on what they found here.
Today, that original African culture still exists in a state dominated by indigenous tradition.
Yet this stretch of coastline between Oaxaca and Guerrero states is an impoverished part of the country. There's not much tourism here, and local industry doesn't extend far beyond fishing and agriculture. Yet few black Mexicans leave to seek better opportunities, and those who do find the wider country not very welcoming.
Indeed, for Rosa Hernandez, the lead councillor of Santo Domingo Armenta, the Afro-Mexican experience is isolating.
We're a vast minority in this country, so that's why many people have never heard of us. They think we're from another country. They don't consider you to be Mexican simply because you're black. But we are Mexicans, and it's only fair that they recognize us, that they value us as much as anyone else.
As the Black Lives Matter movement around the world seeks change and equality for Black Mexico, the challenge for these communities is still at the point of showing they exist. Alistair Baverstock for CGTN, Coajinicuilapa, Mexico. Rosa Hernandez is the council leader in Santo Domingo Armenta, an Afro-Mexican settlement on Mexico's Pacific coast. While she was vaguely aware of the George Floyd video when it went viral, showing police killing an unarmed African-American, CGTN's visit was the first time she had heard of Black Lives Matter and the fight around the world for equality. In this rural and impoverished region, where the majority of Afro-Mexicans live, there's a disconnect with other black communities.
I think that we are isolated here because if you speak to one of the older generations here, they have never even heard of other countries with large black populations, like those in the Caribbean or Belize or Africa. We're quite disconnected, and we don't know about our origins.
Mexico is home to more than 1 million Afro-Mexicans, but their fight for recognition continues. Since a 2001 amendment, Mexico's constitution has recognized different indigenous groups, a change which affords marginalized regions greater development funding. However, the black population here faces challenges.
We need a lot of development. There's no safe drinking water. We need electricity and better social infrastructure. When it comes to healthcare, it's unbelievable. If you have an accident and go to the local clinic, you won't even find a pill for your headache. We've been left behind.
Mexico's Afro-Mexican population is growing. The migration crisis has seen thousands of African and Haitian migrants denied entry to the US remain in Mexico. In Tapachula, on the border with Guatemala, thousands of first-generation migrants have settled. One Congolese migrant recently gave birth to a baby boy, and the mother was so eager to show her commitment to Mexico, she reinstated an African tradition, naming her son after the current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Olisma François from Haiti has settled here too.
I left my country to come here. I left to find a better future, to work, to help my family. There's nothing for it. We're here now. We can't go back. We have to stay here.
No puede regresar, tiene que quedar aquí.
What the future holds for Afro-Mexicans and their place in society will depend on what they do with the opportunities they are given. Alistair Baverstock for CGTN on Mexico's Pacific coast. As the US struggles with racial equality in 2021, the rights of those with African roots who live to the south of the border aren't a pressing issue for government officials. But that's not for a lack of black people. 2.5 million people here identify as Afro-Mexican, as counted for the very first time in Mexico's 2020 census. Yet their issues are largely ignored. Living mostly in communities in the states of Veracruz and Oaxaca, poverty-stricken regions where even high school infrastructure is rare, black Mexicans who seek better opportunities in other parts of the country say they regularly face racism. Sosima Serrano left her community in Oaxaca when she was 14. Now 60, she has lived a lifetime of racial abuses in Mexico City.
There is a lot of racism here. Wherever I go, people will tell me how ugly I am or how ugly my skin color is. I respond that it won't rub off on them, but it makes me feel bad. I even generally avoid social events with friends for fear of discrimination.
Mexico's federal Congress only formally recognized Afro-Mexicans as an ethnic group in 2019, despite their having first arrived here at the same time as Europeans, with the Spanish conquest 500 years before. Indeed, a common complaint by black Mexicans is that the rest of the country is often incredulous that they share a nationality.
I often have problems with migration authorities here, who detain me, telling me that my features are Salvadoran or Cuban, so I have to carry my official papers on me constantly.
Wilner Metelus is Mexico's foremost activist for Afro-Mexican rights and has been detained countless times by migration authorities as he travels the country. He says there is still a long way to go.
It cannot be the case that in the 21st century Afro-Mexicans are not even free to travel around their own country. My colleagues and I are working constantly to create a public consciousness around the terrible and invisible problem of racism in Mexico.
Yet, despite the racism she has faced over the course of a lifetime, Sosima says she's prouder than ever of her Afro-Mexican identity.
Of course I'm proud. Even with all the discrimination, I know how to defend myself.
Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Mexico City.